Welcome, Jen Perlman. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
It's our pleasure. She's running for Congress in District 25 in Florida against everybody's favorite, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's very charismatic, that one. She's got a very loyal
she doesn't just lie every time she gets in front of the cameras or anything like that.
Yeah.
So before we kick it off, Jen, you released a video recently. I want to show everybody this, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Check this out.
This is me at 16 years old in Israel on a high school trip holding an assault rifle, and this is the definition of indoctrination. I grew up in North Miami Beach. I grew up in a very insulated, very Jewish community. We were taught that Palestine and Palestinians, that's not a real thing, that was made up by Arabs. Everybody over there that wasn't Jewish was just Arabs. But the message was always clear that Jews were not safe and that the Arabs wanted to hurt us. My relatives, my great-grandmother, my grandmother were raised with this fear mentality that without the state of Israel, Jews around the world will not be safe. True history was kept from us. We were propagandized. But as I grew older, I began to see a different reality unfolding. I witnessed the rise of the Israeli lobby, exerting its influence on our politics and policies. I learned about the injustices happening thousands of miles away in the name of Jewish people. And I can't stay silent in the face of such injustice. The right to return denied to so many Palestinians. The war fueled by the Israeli government and sanctioned by our own country, condemned by the UN and the International Court of Justice as genocide. We cannot turn a blind eye to this injustice any longer. To me, atonement is really taking accountability for your participation in something that you now realize was not correct in some way and wronged people in some way. I participated in an ethnic cleansing state. I do not feel powerless. I feel hopeful. It is time for us to use our voices, to stand in solidarity with the oppressed, to demand accountability from our leaders. As a candidate, as a mother, as an ally, I pledge to fight for justice and equity for everyone, here at home and abroad. For there can be no peace without true justice. I'm Jen Perlman. I'm running for Congress, Florida's 25th district.
So that was a really, really powerful ad.
Yeah.
What made you, number one, speak out like that, and then number two, take on such a powerful politician?
Yeah. So I took her on in 20, and even at that point, I was still sort of holding out hope in my head for a two-state solution, even then. And now I obviously see that that's not at all possible. But I've been speaking out against this for a few years already, and certainly on my show on generational change. So I started a series called Deconstructing Zionism, actually in October of 22 on our show. So this is just something that I feel is my, I hate to say duty for lack of a better word, but it's part of what I do consider an atonement. And truthfully, I'd probably be doing it even if I weren't someone who did participate in it, just as somebody witnessing it.
I think we all feel that sense, at least I do, of, I mean, I feel shame. I feel guilt. I mean, when I'm writing a tax check this year and I'm thinking about what that money is going towards, it's horrifying to me. It's utterly horrifying to me. And then you have people out there saying, oh, well, why do you care so much? It's like, how can you not care about what we're seeing? How can you not care about what our government, not just what our dollars are going to fund, but the diplomatic umbrella? I mean, none of this would be possible without our support, our funding, you know, our diplomatic cover at the UN, all of those things. So I think you have to be like, I don't understand how you cannot care, how this cannot keep you up at night. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, well, something that is very important to me that I've been talking about for years, and it goes towards this idea of building coalition, is that people need to understand that we all are under the same oppressor. So what's going on against the Palestinians, it's the same oppressor. It's the same capital oppressor. It's American empire. So whether it's affecting us abroad or at home, we're all essentially fighting against the same power. And I think that the more people realize that, because at the end of the day, my goal is general strike May Day 2028. And the only way that that's ever going to happen is if all of these different movements start showing up for each other, recognizing that we all have the same oppressor. And that's the coalition we need to be building. So it is very frustrating that people really look at it as that's going on over their problem, when it is very much a global problem.
Jen, talk about a little bit more of what you were discussing in that ad, of your journey, of your understanding what you were taught about Zionism, how you discovered this harsh reality that directly contradicted, because it can be very difficult if you grow up in a community with a certain identity, with certain beliefs. It can be very difficult to separate from that because you almost feel a loss of self and certainly a loss of potential, people, loved ones, support network around you. So I'd love for you to just expound on that a bit.
Yeah, it's definitely been difficult. There are people that were in my life that are no longer speaking to me, which I anticipated that would happen, which is, a small price to pay for speaking truth. But I want to say when I was in Israel, it was 1987. It was in the summer of 87, which was actually before the first Intifada. And it was also before all of the walls and different highways were built. So when I was there, I always, say there was no visible signs of an apartheid state. It wasn't anything like what people say they've seen going there now. And so I didn't see it when I was there. In the early 2000s, I started seeing things during the second Intifada, where I was seeing, so it's a nonviolent resistance, but they're being met with violence. And so that just sort of got stored. And then around the same time, I started seeing all the anti-BDS legislation cropping up in this country. And as someone who takes civil liberties very seriously, that was a rabbit hole that I started diving down with, well, what's BDS? And, realizing, okay, so this is another nonviolent organic movement out of Palestine, and just started researching and digging. And that was also around the time when this new group of historians started releasing what is information that wasn't available when I was a kid. And so it just sort of started happening slowly but surely, but it unraveled like a house of cards. And then I started putting it together with places I had been there and things they had taken us to do, and planting trees in East Jerusalem and having to travel to places with an armed guard. And at 16 and knowing like, okay, if my teenager were over there, there is no way that I would be okay with them going somewhere where you feel it's necessary that they have somebody with an assault rifle. So to me, that is a sign of you're somewhere you ought not be, that we were being used as human shields. And ultimately that as students over there, and this was called Alexander Muss High School in Israel. It's a program that high school students do a lot. It's based out of South Florida, so there's obviously a lot of South Florida connection. But really, Jewish students from all over can do this. And you study in Israel, and then you go on the weekends and see what you were studying. So now I realize learning fake history, made up history. It would be like if I went to do a high school trip and stayed in the Magic Kingdom for a little bit and just was taught that this is Florida history, is this, right? Like that's basically what we were brainwashed. But at the time I had no idea.
Yeah, I grew up in New Rochelle, in Jamal Bowman's former district, and I knew plenty of people who went on Birthright. It was called Birthright. You take the trip to Israel, it's funded fully, and we all know the way it works. You could be from Brooklyn or somewhere in the U.S., and if you're Jewish, you go there and you can take Palestinian land, basically, right? It's
when I got hired at MSNBC, AIPAC immediately reached out. Oh, you want to go on a trip? It'll be fun.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Oh, you never told me that.
I didn't tell you
crazy.
that.
Did you go?
No, I did not go.
I wasn't.
I sort of wish I'm interested to know what it would have been like, but no, I did not go.
It's a brainwashing. It's a propaganda tour. It's complete brainwashing. And people that did what I did, the high school program I did, Birthright is only for people who have never been to Israel. So by definition, the people that do the program in high school, none of us did Birthright because we'd already been there. So they got in our brains even younger. They got in us like way earlier, because by the time people do Birthright, it's usually after college. So yeah, we got in there. They got in there real early. We were taught that Arabs were lesser, that they were dirty, that they were uncivilized, that they wanted to hurt us. We were told that Palestine isn't real, that there's no such thing as Palestinians. And my congresswoman will not say Palestinian. It will not come out of her mouth. Oh no, it will. You will never hear the word Palestine or Palestinian coming out of her mouth ever.
All right, guys, this is just a little snippet of the conversation with Jen Perlman. She's running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Definitely check out her website, gen2024.org, gen2024.org. Go support her. She's running a big race, and she's taking a very principled stand here and fighting against Zionism. So hook her up with a donation, hook her up with volunteering or whatever you could do in order to help her. We gotta notch a victory, man. They just took out Bowman and replaced him with an absolute clown, Latimer, so we got to fight back. Go ahead and watch the entire thing on Substack below.